Hello, my name's Zariah. Last week I bought a private jet, but when I walked into the showroom, my sister, who works there, laughed and told everyone, "She's just here for pictures." They believed her. They always do. She smiled while they erased my name. Again. They cropped me out of family photos, called my company a fluke, said I was too soft, too sensitive, too emotional to lead. But what happens when the girl you spent years mocking is the one holding the check? What happens when she stops asking for space and takes the entire frame? Would they still laugh if they knew what I was about to play through the showroom speakers? I stood tall, even as their laughter still echoed behind me. It wasn't the kind of laugh that fades easily. It lingered in the air like the scent of cheap cologne, overpowering, cloying, impossible to ignore. I kept my eyes ahead and my back straight, refusing to flinch as I walked back to the reception desk. The woman at the front, Molly, her name tag read, looked up with a start when she saw me returning. Her polite mask slipped, just for a moment. Maybe she remembered how she'd blinked in confusion earlier when my name wasn't on the VIP list. "I'd like to speak to your manager," I said evenly. "I'm here to make a purchase." She hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the floor where Vera still held court like the queen of polished facades. I caught her gaze, just briefly, and that same smirk curved on her lips like a scar I'd spent years pretending didn't sting. Molly cleared her throat. "Yes, of course. I'll page him now. Please have a seat." "No need," I replied. "I'll stand." The lobby was a glass cathedral, sunlight bouncing off polished chrome and cream leather furniture. Everything about it screamed exclusivity. Everything except me. At least that's what they thought. I scanned the room. Vera laughed too loudly at something, probably a joke at my expense. The sales team surrounded her like moths to a flame, unaware, or maybe willfully ignorant, of just how many times that flame had burned me before. I stood in silence, trying to steady my breathing, resisting the urge to pull out my phone to check emails or scroll through the news. That would make it look like I had time to waste. I didn't. The past few years had taught me that perception was everything, especially when your own family had spent decades shaping everyone's perception of you into something so far removed from reality that even you began to question your own worth. I had built something real, profitable, sustainable. I had signed NDAs with investors, managed cash flows during 3 economic dips, built a community of women who trusted me with their hard-earned dollars. And still, in this building, I was just Vera's little sister. The manager arrived 15 minutes later. A tall, lean man in his late 40s, Armani suit, polished shoes, polished smile. "Ms. Marceline?" he asked. I nodded once. "That's right." "I apologize for the confusion earlier. There must have been an error with the list." "There wasn't," I said. "The list was edited." He blinked. Well, let me personally assist you, if you'd like to step this way." "No," I said again. "I'll conduct my business here." His face stiffened slightly, but he recovered quickly. "Of course, I can bring the necessary documents out here." As he walked away, Vera made her move. She approached with the same energy she used at Christmas when she was about to hand out gifts she didn't buy but had everyone believe she had. "Well, this is a surprise," she said. Her voice was honey with vinegar underneath. "Didn't expect to see you here." "You're not very good at pretending," I replied. "You knew I'd be here," she chuckled. "Sweetheart, if I'd known you were actually buying, I wouldn't have let them delete your name." But you know how these things go. Miscommunications, misfiled emails. You were never good at lying, Vera. Just good at making others doubt the truth. Her smile faltered, only slightly, but I saw it, like a crack in porcelain. She glanced at the others in the room, then leaned in. "Is this some sort of revenge play? Coming here, making a scene?" I tilted my head. If I wanted a scene, I'd have brought the press. Or Dad. Her eyes narrowed. You always think everyone's out to get you. No, I said. I just finally stopped pretending they weren't. Before she could respond, the manager returned with a leather folder. Ms. Marceline, if you're ready. I reached out and took it. My name, correctly spelled, was printed in bold at the top of the document. I flipped through the pages slowly, methodically, making sure she saw that I understood every term better than anyone in this building expected. You're actually doing this, Vera murmured. I looked up at her. I was always going to do it. She opened her mouth to respond, but I cut her off. You know what your biggest mistake was? I asked quietly. You made me invisible, and you got used to not looking. The manager cleared his throat gently. If we're all set, we just need your signature, I signed. They laughed when they thought I was a joke. They won't be laughing for long. The door to the side lounge clicked shut behind me, muting most of the chatter outside. Inside, the space was quiet, too quiet. It smelled like overpriced coffee and lemon polish. Glass walls boxed me in, so while I was technically seated in privacy, everyone out there still had a clear view. The walls didn't hide humiliation. They displayed it. I eased down onto the cream leather couch, angling myself so I could still see the floor through the frosted panels. Vera stood with her arm lightly touching a man's elbow, smiling, laughing, and always just a little too loud. That smile, the one she wore when she wanted people to know she was in control, was front and center. It was the same smile she used at Mom's retirement dinner when she publicly thanked me for helping her rehearse her keynote speech, a speech I wrote from scratch. That night, I'd smiled too, quietly, tightly, like now. Her eyes found mine through the glass. She didn't flinch, no apology, no nod of acknowledgement, just that look, pleased. Like the quarterback who knew the opposing team wouldn't even score. I leaned back, arms crossed. The chill from the AC crawled along my skin, but it wasn't what made me shiver. That look, hers, wasn't new. I'd known it since childhood. I remembered sophomore year, math league finals. I beat Vera's score on the regional test, something no one expected. That night, I overheard her telling Dad I'd copied the answers. She said it with a shrug, like she was doing me a favor. Dad believed her. Of course he did. Vera always sounded so sure. Mom didn't argue either. Just gave me that soft head tilt and muttered, "Maybe don't be so competitive with your sister, sweetie. It's unbecoming." Unbecoming. That word stayed with me longer than the rumor ever did. The past 2 decades had been full of those small cuts, invisible to others, but deep enough to bruise. A pair of voices yanked me back into the present. 2 sales associates just outside the lounge. "She looks like one of those influencers," the younger one said, trying to keep her voice low and failing. "Probably just wants pics for Instagram," the other chuckled. "Yeah, no one's walking in off the street buying jets, especially not looking like that." Looking like what? I hadn't dressed flashy, just clean, quiet, expensive, dark slacks, white blouse, hair tied back, no designer logos screaming for attention. But I guess that wasn't enough when you didn't have a polished entourage or a last name that bought respect. I didn't move, didn't blink. Just let the words pass through me, burning a little on their way out. I'd heard worse, from family. Vera hadn't just discredited me professionally. She'd undermined my entire character. Over the years, she'd casually floated rumors about me being too emotional, too artsy, too unstable to manage real business. When I raised my first round of funding, she said at dinner, It's cute how investors still love a good underdog story. Cute. I glanced down at my phone, needing a moment to reset. A new message from Monica, my assistant, popped up. Payment processed. You're clear. Confirmation attached. And yes, they will see the amount. A soft smile crept across my lips. Double the showroom's average sale. Just enough to make their jaws twitch. I didn't do it to prove anything. I did it because I could. Because my name had been crossed out too many times. This time, it would shine. Stamped, sealed, paid in full. I looked up from the screen. The reception desk was still bustling. Vera was now speaking to someone in a navy suit. She hadn't looked my way again. Not yet. But she would. I thought about the last family reunion, the one I almost didn't attend. I'd shown up late, drove 5 hours straight after a board meeting. When I got there, everyone was already in the backyard, the group photo already taken. Sorry, hun, we didn't know if you were still coming, Mom had said, handing me a lukewarm plate of barbecue. Later, when the framed photo showed up in Dad's study, printed, hung, titled, All of Us, I was still missing. Again, I was used to being edited out of the picture. But this moment, it wouldn't be forgotten, not blurred, not conveniently skipped over. I adjusted my posture, smoothed my shirt, and let my heart beat steady. The burn had passed. In its place was something cooler, sharper, a kind of resolve that came only after you stopped hoping people would do right by you. I wasn't here to be recognized. I was here to own. And somewhere across the showroom, Vera was still laughing. For now, you erased me from the frame. Now I'll make sure you never forget my name. I sat still, fingers curled around the edge of the chair as the air conditioner hummed behind me. The lounge was quiet, but the noise inside my head refused to settle. The manager's words hadn't surprised me. A misunderstanding. They always called it that, didn't they? As if exclusion was just a clerical error. I needed a second to breathe, to remind myself where I was. My phone buzzed gently in my palm, a new email from the showroom. Confirmation of the transaction. I opened it and scrolled to the bottom where my full name was printed on the ownership record. Zariah Marcheline. Bold, legible, unmistakable. I stared at the letters for a moment. That name, mine, carried more weight than they'd ever allowed it to. And somehow, just seeing it printed like that, it triggered something. Not pride, not yet, something heavier. A memory. The photo. It was 2 years ago, Thanksgiving, San Diego. The house was full of cousins and laughter, smells of roasted rosemary turkey and pecan pie seeping into every corner. I'd driven down from LA after working a late Friday meeting. I got there in time to help Mom finish the gravy and to make small talk with people who barely remembered what I did for a living. After dessert, everyone had gathered in the backyard for the annual family photo. I was there. I remember because Vera insisted I stand in the back, saying something about balance and height. It didn't matter. What mattered came later. 3 weeks later, when I visited Mom and saw the framed photo hanging in the hallway. Everyone was there, their smiling faces, tilted heads, arms around each other. Except mine. I stared at the picture, blinking, waiting for my face to emerge from the crowd. But no, it wasn't a bad crop. It wasn't a blur. I had been completely edited out. I turned to Mom. I was there. She looked at the photo, then at me. Oh, honey, the lighting was weird on your side. You didn't look your best. I remember how she said it. Soft, sweet, dismissive. I remember feeling something in me fold inward. That photo stayed on the wall for over a year. No one replaced it. No one sent a new version. No one thought it mattered. It did. It always did. And then there was Dad. A few months later, we had dinner at a quiet restaurant downtown. It was his birthday. Vera was seated beside him, talking about some charity gala she helped organize. He looked so proud. "You girls are amazing," he said, raising his glass. "Especially Vera and her app. Our family's brilliant entrepreneur." I nearly choked on my drink. I'd built that app from the ground up. Vera had used it once during a conference and decided she was part of the story. I cleared my throat. "Dad, I designed it, built it. It's mine." He blinked, not out of malice, but out of genuine confusion. "Oh, right, you helped her with it." I didn't correct him again. There was no point. Sometimes people don't forget, they just don't want to remember the truth. Back in the lounge, I exhaled slowly and glanced at the glass wall. My reflection stared back at me. Not the girl from that Thanksgiving, not the daughter erased from the hallway photo, not the woman mistaken for someone else's assistant. Me, still here. "You can crop me from a picture," I whispered under my breath, "but you can't erase what I've built." A tap on the glass drew my attention. The manager had returned, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Marceline," he said, his tone carefully neutral, "we're ready whenever you are. And I've been made aware there may have been some oversights in how you were received." I stood, brushing my hands along my sides, feeling the silk of my blouse smooth out the tension across my ribcage. "There was no oversight," I said, looking him directly in the eyes. "You treated me exactly the way they wanted you to." He opened his mouth to respond, but I didn't wait for the excuse. I stepped forward. "But let's fix that." I walked past him toward the closing room. My heels clicked steadily against the polished tile, a rhythm I hadn't heard in years but felt more natural than ever. As I reached the edge of the lobby, I noticed Vera, still talking, still laughing, pausing for just a second as she spotted me approaching. She didn't wave, didn't smile, neither did I. "You thought your silence would break me, but I've learned how to speak with actions." I kept walking, the clipboard still in the manager's hand behind me, but I could feel the shift in the room. Something had cracked open, not loud, not theatrical, just the kind of silence that follows when people realize they underestimated the wrong person. They didn't stop me. No one dared to, not even Vera. Heels clicking across polished tile, I was led to a private side room, smaller, colder, with frosted glass that didn't quite reach the ceiling. The manager opened the door and gestured for me to enter like he was holding the gate to a castle, forgetting I was the one who already owned the land beneath it. "Please wait here," he said, voice professional, too polite now. "I'll personally assist you." He left, closing the door with a soft, rehearsed click. I paced once around the room before sitting down. The leather chair was comfortable, but I didn't relax into it. I couldn't. Not yet. Across the frosted glass, Vera's voice filtered through. Something clipped. Confident. I didn't need to hear the words to know the tone. I'd heard it my whole life. Whether it was at school plays or family barbecues, she always knew how to position herself just right. The lighting, the laughter, the perfect moment to say something that felt like a compliment but cut like a knife. My jaw tightened. Years ago, there was a networking gala, hosted by a tech accelerator I had fought tooth and nail to get into. I spent weeks refining my pitch, creating the demo, rehearsing the financials until I could quote them in my sleep. It was mine, every line, every slide, every spark. The morning of the presentation, Vera offered to come for moral support. Instead, she showed up in a sleek black blazer, shook hands with the sponsors, and somehow ended up introducing the project herself. When the time came, I watched from the side of the stage as she delivered my words with her face. The deck had been slightly tweaked. Different fonts, new cover page, her name listed first. Afterward, when I confronted her outside the valet line, she didn't even blink. "I packaged it," she said. "You made it usable." Usable. I hadn't said anything that night. I was younger, afraid of burning bridges I didn't even know I'd already been locked out of. But I remembered. And now, she'd done it again. Different setting, same script. There was another time, more recent, more disgusting. A family friend, Susan from Rancho Bernardo, pulled me aside during Aunt Lainey's birthday lunch. She smiled like she was trying to protect me. "Zariah, honey, I just wanted you to hear it from me before it spreads too far. I heard someone say you were dating that investor, the one from Chicago. That you weren't exactly pitching with PowerPoints, if you catch my drift." I had every word. I looked at Vera across the room then, sipping champagne like it was her job. I didn't confront her. Back then, I thought success would speak louder than rumors. I was wrong. Back in the present, I stood. My body moved before my brain gave it permission. I stepped out of the glass-walled lounge and walked straight toward her. She didn't see me at first. She was mid-sentence, mid-charm, mid-performance. "Vera," I said clearly. The group turned. A few faces I recognized. Executives, managers, well-manicured guests. Vera turned, her smile wide, eyebrows lifted. "Zariah, everything all right? You didn't like the room?" I took one step closer. "You've taken my voice once. You won't do it again." The entire group stilled. Her smile froze in place, but her eyes flicked. Just for a second. "I'm not sure what you mean," she said, laughing lightly. I leaned in just enough that only she could hear me. "Next time you try to erase me, remember this. I'm the one holding the check." Her laugh caught in her throat. She didn't speak. I waited a beat longer, letting it sit. Then I turned and walked away. It was quiet. Too quiet. Not because people didn't have things to say, they just didn't know how to say them anymore. Because once someone sees you differently, even for a second, it shatters whatever box they tried to keep you in. As I reached the corridor to the closing room, I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. I felt ready. That was enough. She played the public. I came to close the deal. The manager's voice trailed behind me as I moved toward the room they'd finally prepped for the signing. The hallway was narrow, quieter here, the chatter of the main floor fading like background noise on a bad radio signal. I glanced to my right. Vera was still standing where I'd left her, still trying to recover that smile she'd worn like armor. Inside the room, everything looked carefully staged. Glass tabletop, a decanter of water, pens aligned with a brochure embossed in silver. Luxury, legacy, lifestyle. Legacy, what a word. I took the seat closest to the window, letting sunlight rest across my hands. A moment later, the manager entered, still chipper but more measured now, the overly confident sales tone stripped back to something cautious. "Ms. Marshalline," he said, with the kind of deference that's learned, not felt. "We appreciate your patience. I'll be personally walking you through everything." I gave him a polite nod. "Let's start." He began flipping through the agreement. I answered his questions clearly, cleanly. No fluff. I could feel the shift in his demeanor. The way he leaned forward when I referenced asset liquidity, the slight glance he gave the internal staff list when I mentioned compliance language. He'd underestimated me. Most of them had. That's what happened when your name wasn't the one plastered on banners. Then a young clerk entered, holding a slim folder, and slid it onto the table between us. "These are the gala sponsorship docs," she said. We included the final press kit. We'll be pushing out the lineup next Monday. My name on a press kit. I hadn't agreed to sponsor any gala. I opened the folder slowly. A tri-fold glossy promo sheet stared back at me. On the back page, under the Gold Sponsors section, was my company's logo. Centered, bold, unmistakable. Lumira Financial Solutions. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't agreed to this. I flipped to the attached email thread, scanned, and there it was, clear as daylight. Confirmed, Lumira to appear under Gold Tier sponsor. Proceed. Vera Cressida. She stole my brand. Again. The air left the room like someone cracked a window. I set the folder down and stood. The manager blinked. Is there a problem, Ms. Marceline? I need to step out for a moment. Before he could offer to escort me, I was already moving, down the hall, back toward the lounge. My heels hit the tile with the rhythm of purpose. Vera was chatting with two older gentlemen near the espresso bar, pretending nothing had happened. She always did this, floated between circles, left no fingerprints. I walked straight up to her. I need a word. She turned, that syrupy voice slipping into place. Oh, now, I'm in the middle of... I didn't lower my voice. Use my name one more time without permission, and I will tear this showroom down from the outside in. Her eyes narrowed slightly, but her lips curled upward, almost amused. Zariah, come on, it's just branding. Exposure. It helps you, too. Helps me? I leaned in, just enough that only she could hear me now. You've stolen my work, my words, my narrative, and you've always counted on me being too polite to stop you, but I'm not that girl anymore. Don't be dramatic, she said through her teeth. People don't like a scene. Neither do I said. That's why I'm giving you this warning in private. Be grateful. She tried to laugh, but it died before reaching her throat. For the first time, I saw it. Not fear, not guilt, just uncertainty, like she realized the rules had changed and no one told her. You can be the face of a lie, I said. I'm the owner of the truth, and I'm done staying quiet. She looked at me, but her silence said more than any word could, and this time, I wasn't the one retreating. The manager appeared behind me, clearly unsure of what he was walking into. We're ready for the final signature, he said cautiously. I didn't break eye contact with Vera. You've had your turn, I said. Now watch how I close. And I walked back to the signing room. Her smile faded, and for the first time, mine stayed. The room they walked me into felt like it had been built to impress. Sleek chairs, chrome fixtures, a massive glass table that reflected too much light. It didn't feel like a place to finalize a transaction. It felt like a stage. And sitting on the far end of it, legs crossed, posture perfect, was Vera. She didn't look at me right away. She was too busy pretending to review a document she clearly wasn't reading. That was always her move, dominate the space without having to claim it out loud. I stepped in without hesitation. A younger staffer, probably in his 20s, greeted me at the table. His voice was smooth but rushed. Good afternoon, ma'am. Just need your ID one more time for the official paperwork. I handed it over, watched him examine it with a bit more attention than necessary. There was a pause. Not long, just enough to remind me how many people still needed convincing. Then it happened. He turned toward Vera and held out the folder. You're the primary signer, correct? Vera looked up, gave the kind of smile that was made for gala lighting. That's right, she said. Before her hand could even graze the folder, I stepped forward and slid the cashier's check across the table. Actually, I am, I said. The check says otherwise. It landed with a soft but undeniable thud. The kind of sound money makes when it no longer has to prove itself. The young man blinked. Oh, yes, I see now. Apologies. Vera's expression didn't change, but the delay in her reaction told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't expected me to walk in ready. She'd expected hesitation. She always had. She turned toward me with a soft laugh. Zaria, no need to be dramatic. You could have just let them know up front. They're used to dealing with a certain tier of buyer. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The documents were passed to me this time, correctly. As I flipped through the signature pages, the door to the office cracked open again. A man in a navy blazer strolled in with what I assumed was another potential client. They weren't supposed to be in this room, but showrooms love to show off a buyer mid-deal. It's good theater. The client was mid-sentence when he looked over at us. Then his voice rose, cheerful and unfiltered. Oh my God, are you the founder of Lumira? My wife listens to your podcast every week. She's obsessed with your retirement planning series. Vera straightened. She assumed the compliment was hers. I could see it, the flicker in her eyes, the half nod, the smile about to form. But then the man pointed. No, not her. Her. That's Zaria Marceline, right? Everyone turned. I didn't speak. I signed my name and passed the folder back, then looked up and gave the man a small, genuine smile. Tell your wife thank you. The man smiled back, clearly pleased, then exited the room with his associate. Silence lingered like perfume after a party. Heavy, noticeable. Vera shifted in her seat. The staffer collected the documents, gave a short bow, and left us alone. She cleared her throat. Was this all just to embarrass me? I stood slowly, adjusted the sleeves of my blouse, and looked at her. Not through her, not past her, but at her, square in the eyes. No, this was to remind you, I'm not the one who should be embarrassed. The deal was done. The papers signed. The money wired. Everything they thought I couldn't do, I just finished in under 30 minutes. I walked to the door, let my hand rest briefly on the frame. No dramatic exit, no monologue, just truth hanging in the air like smoke. If they wanted a performance, I was about to give them one they'd never forget. The click of the closing room door behind me felt final. I didn't turn to look at Vera. I didn't need to. Her silence had already told me everything. There was nothing left to say between us that hadn't already been weaponized in a whisper or dressed in polite betrayal. Walking back through the showroom lobby, the space felt different. Not louder, not quieter, just aware, like people had finally decided to stop pretending they hadn't noticed. The folder in my hand felt heavier than it should have. Maybe because it was more than documents now. It was proof, a kind of proof they couldn't unsee. I caught Noelle standing near the espresso station, the same Noelle who'd offered me a soft smile earlier that day, the same one who had said, "I've followed your work for years." Now she stood stiffly beside Vera, her voice lowered as she leaned in to whisper something. So she chose a side after all. I didn't stop walking. There was no point. But it stung, more than I cared to admit. At the edge of the showroom, I found an empty seat near the floor-to-ceiling window, out of direct view but close enough to hear murmurs from the staff desk. I sat down, resting the folder on my lap. My hand hovered over the flap for a moment before I opened it and slipped out a small, matte black recorder. It was small, older, scratched at the edges, but reliable. I clicked it on and let the sound fill the small space around me. Vera's voice came first. She's just here for the photos, probably wants to brag online. Honestly, she always needed attention. Laughter followed. One of the salesmen chimed in. You think she even knows how these planes work? She probably thinks a hangar is where they park her influencer deals. More laughter. I closed my eyes, just for a second, not to escape it, but to absorb it fully. That was the thing about recordings. They didn't just capture words, they captured tone, and tone told the truth. A woman at the front desk, mid-40s, polished blazer, name tag that read Karen D, glanced over. Her brow furrowed as the sound carried across the showroom's quiet tension. She tilted her head slightly, listening harder. Another staff member turned toward the source. I didn't stop the recording. I didn't say a word. Then someone behind me, probably an assistant or intern, murmured just loud enough for their shock to land. Wait, that's what they said about her? I heard chairs shift. Movement. Quiet acknowledgement. I let the recording end, and for the first time all day, I stood not with defensiveness, but with direction. My voice was steady, but clear enough to carry, "If anyone here wants to know who I am," I held up the recorder. "You'll hear it next." I walked toward the main console near the welcome desk. It was where they usually piped in upbeat music or soft marketing loops. Today, it would serve a different purpose. As I reached the panel, fingers hovering just above the controls, I caught a reflection in the glass, not of me, but of Vera, standing near the staircase, watching. She knew. I could see it on her face. That moment of realization that the carefully controlled illusion she'd maintained for years was slipping, that I wasn't just here to sign papers. I was here to rewrite the story. They framed me for a fool. Now the world sees who actually owns the portrait. I moved slowly, purposefully, toward the main console. The heels of my boots tapped against the polished floor in steady rhythm. I could feel eyes on me, but no one dared to speak. The room had shifted, not in volume, in weight. Just as I reached the panel, a young staffer stepped in front of me, clearly unsure whether to stop me or offer me water. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't flinch. I pulled a business card from my wallet, flipped it over, and handed it to him. "You'll want to let me finish." He read it, blinked, then stepped aside. I plugged in the recorder. The device was already cued. One click. That's all it took. Vera's voice crackled through the showroom speakers, clear, confident, cruel. "She's just here to take pictures. Let her pose." The room held its breath. Then came the others, a male voice. "She's got that influencer vibe." A third, a woman this time, sneering beneath the words, probably begging for someone to let her sit in the cockpit. The audio wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. The silence afterward was louder than the tape itself. No one looked at me, but no one looked at Vera either. I left the device on the counter and turned toward the main service desk. The LED screen behind them had been looping through promotional banners all day. Luxury models, sleek packages, VIP packages. But now? Zariah Marshalline, owner, Jet, Nud 7221. It rotated beside a showroom ad with Vera's face on it. Full smile, arms crossed, tagline underneath. "Confidence you can count on." And suddenly, the contrast wasn't just visual, it was visceral. Old lie, new truth. A voice behind me cleared its throat. Soft at first, but insistent. "Ms. Cressida, do you endorse those remarks from your team?" It was a journalist, young, blazer too big for his frame, mic in hand, eyes sharp. He had been standing at the back, unnoticed, but not anymore. Vera turned toward him slowly. Her face had gone neutral, the one she used when trying to contain damage, not deny it. "I think there's been a misinterpretation." I didn't wait to hear the rest. I walked. straight down the center aisle, past the marble fixtures and glass-walled offices. The press followed, not just the reporter, but onlookers with phones, staff members suddenly remembering my name, and some clients who'd kept their distance, now leaning in. I stopped once at the door, turned. Vera hadn't moved, her arms were at her sides, but her eyes were flickering. "You thought I was here for a photo?" I said, steady. I nodded toward the banner behind me. "I came for the picture and the frame." And with that, I walked out. No applause, no spotlight, just the sound of my own footsteps, owning every inch of the floor they once thought I'd never step on with confidence. When the world cuts you out, sometimes the best revenge is owning the whole gallery. A week had passed. No microphones, no interviews, no echo of footsteps behind me, just the thrum of wind against the open hangar and the low hum of the ground crew finishing final checks on my jet. I stood inside the hangar, alone. The desert sun was softer today, filtered through the wide-open doors, the kind of late-morning light that didn't demand attention. It just warmed what was already there. The plane gleamed in silence. "Marshalline Holdings," it read across the tail in custom lettering. I hadn't chosen the font for flash, just clarity. For decades, I'd been a footnote, a helper, someone whose name could be left off the invitation, the photo, the thank you speech. Not anymore. I stepped closer and ran my fingers across the metal, not for drama, just to feel it, to ground myself in the fact that this was real, that I didn't need anyone else to hand me a seat at their table, because I'd built my own. A knock at the side door echoed through the hangar. The courier stood there, clipboard in hand. He looked young, startled even, like he didn't expect me to answer the door myself. "I've got a delivery," he said, "from San Diego. Hand delivery. No return address." I thanked him, took the thin package, and waited until he'd left before bringing it back inside. There was no label, just a plain envelope. I opened it carefully. Inside were 2 photographs. One was the original family Thanksgiving photo, the one I'd been cropped out of. The other was nearly identical. Same setting, same poses, except this time I was in the center. My face wasn't blurred, my head wasn't tilted. I was simply there. No caption, no email, just a note written in that familiar, all-capital script Dad always used for cards. We didn't see it then. We do now. I didn't cry, not out of defiance, just there was nothing left in me that needed their permission to exist. Their recognition wasn't redemption. It was an afterthought, a small repair on a house I'd already rebuilt on my own. I slid the photos back into the envelope, tucked it in my bag, and turned toward the stairs leading up to the jet. Inside, the cabin was ready, bright, clean, waiting. As I buckled in, my phone buzzed. A text from Noelle. "I resigned yesterday. Just wanted to say thank you. You made me believe we can say no and still survive." I smiled, tapping the message once to reread it. Then I looked out the window as the hangar doors began to close. The world outside shrank gently behind the frame of the cabin glass. Ahead of me, Chicago, a gathering of women, many of them first-generation entrepreneurs. Women who had once been told, "Maybe next time," or "You're too quiet for this kind of room." This time, they'd be heard. The engines stirred to life. I leaned back, hands resting on my lap, eyes soft but steady. They had tried to reduce me to background noise. They'd cropped me out, redacted me, talked over me, in boardrooms, in kitchens, in every damn holiday photo that had ever hung crooked on Mom's wall. But I didn't vanish. I chose the camera. I chose the angle. And now, I choose where I land. Sometimes the loudest victories are the ones made in silence. When you don't just speak up, you own the room. Zariah's story reminds us that being overlooked doesn't mean being powerless. It means they never saw you coming. Have you ever been treated like you didn't belong, only to prove everyone wrong? Share your story in the comments. And if this hit home, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more true stories of quiet power and unforgettable redemption.